One more Ohio State player taken in the third round. It's Jeremy Ruckert, the tight end, going to his hometown New York Jets. I'm Nathan Baird from cleveland.com along with Stephen Means. And this was one of the teams that we thought might be in the mix for him. We knew that the New York teams were interested in maybe bringing him back home. I saw him talking to a Giants guy at Ohio State's Pro Day, and I know they talked to a lot of guys. Maybe that doesn't mean anything, but the Jets have a need at tight end, and we'll talk about that in a minute and how that fits. But let's tell people who maybe are from New York and are trying to catch up with what Ruckert has done at Ohio State. He did not have a prolific receiving career at Ohio State because those guys who went in the first round, including the one that your team took at number 10, he did have a prolific career at Ohio State. I think Ruckert was fourth in targets for Ohio State last year, but with 39, and the three guys ahead of him all had more than 100. So that should tell you something. Like that's how the share broke down. But over the course of his 4 years at Ohio State, he converted from this sort of glorified receiver that he was at Lindenhurst when he was New York's Gatorade Player of the Year to becoming more of an all-around tight end by the time he's leaving Ohio State.
Yeah, Desmond Howard was saying it right after he got picked, which, I mean, this is the same Desmond Howard who was choking on your quarterback. He had some good things to say about Jeremy Ruckert. He called him the best blocking tight end in the draft, which I don't think anybody in the world would have said that about Jeremy Ruckert when he first got to Ohio State as a top 100 recruit. You'd have thought he would have left with 200 catches in his career. And that's just not how it worked out and he's got two good excuses why. You just mentioned it. One of them is his teammate again, and the other one is Chris Olave. But the Jets need weapons for their young quarterback. And they spent day one going and getting a pretty good one in Garrett Wilson as a wide receiver. And if there is a guy on this Ohio State football roster from last year where you go, whose pro career is not going to match his college career at all, it's almost not going to make any sense, it's Jeremy Ruckert, because he might go to the Jets and be their second or third leading receiver, just depending on how Salah wants to use him next year. That was never going to be on the table for him at Ohio State, which he always understood and always said he wanted to be developed as a full tight end. And so maybe if he goes to Iowa, he's the 50th pick just because people fall in love with his ability to catch passes, which is always a valuable skill in the NFL level because there's not a lot of guys who can do that. But if you tie that in with his natural receiving ability with what he's developed into as a blocker, that might, his career might last longer, because if you're not George Kittle, Travis Kelce level as a receiving tight end, it really doesn't matter if you can catch the ball.
This is the second year in a row an Ohio State player has been selected in the draft. Last year was a fifth-round pick, Luke Farrell, who went to the Jaguars. And the previous 2 years, 19 and 20, when Ohio State went to the playoffs, Ruckert and Farrell were a major duo helping kind of drive that offense. And through that experience, they played a lot of 12 personnel. Ruckert got a lot of experience breaking out wide, but then also playing inline tight end too. And then that became more of his responsibility this past year, where Iowa State really only had, instead of being a 1A, 1B, it became a clear one, and then guys, trying to help him out behind that. So Ruckert has seen both worlds. I think the Jets are getting a guy, as you said, 53 receptions in his career. There were guys in this draft class at tight end who had more receptions than that just in 2021. But again, it's the targets. So I would, for Jets fans who just kind of want to know what he's made of, he didn't get a volume of targets, but I agree with Desmond Howard that I can't evaluate if he's the best blocker in the draft, but his blocking has increased significantly, has improved significantly over these years. And he had a habit of showing off that he isn't just a lug out there as a receiver. He has some acrobatic, like, kind of highlight catches over the course of his career. He stepped up in some big moments. There was one against Alabama in the national championship game where he's kind of running down the seam. There was one in the end zone against Wisconsin in 2019 in the Big Ten championship game. He's had some real big time receiving tight end moments. And I agree with you. I'm fascinated to see if he can sync up with just more opportunity to be what is maybe his natural state as a receiver in the NFL.
Yeah, I think he's of the four Ohio State players who have been taken so far, I think his is the most interesting situation in terms of, you think Garrett and Chris are just going to be Garrett and Chris because they're first rounders and that's what you expect. While with Nicholas Petit-Frere, there's a little bit more development there, but it feels like Jeremy Ruckert might outplay his draft ranking depending on how the Jets want to use him. And that'll be interesting to watch.
101st overall. We were all thinking he would go a little bit higher than that, but we were right
Mhm.
picking him to go here in the third round. And after all those years of not being able to get very many targets because of Garrett Wilson, now he gets to go play with Garrett Wilson. I
Yeah.
think it'll be fine, though. I think they'll probably figure out a way to make it work. No defensive players taken so far. We're going to talk about that and many other things on Buckeye Talk. Get the podcast wherever you can find it. And there'll be a recap one coming up on Monday with Steven and Doug, who will join for that, and kind of recapping how the whole draft went for Ohio State.